Welcome back. It's time for Perspective. And of course, I'm joined by Job Ndege as well as Wilfred Muliro, who are political analysts. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We want to look at, what happened earlier today. President Uhuru Kenyatta renaming his government. We've seen changes in cabinet, changes in government. Did you see it coming, Job?
Yes, it was long overdue. Catherine, in fact, remember sometimes last year people were talking of a cabinet reshuffle and so on and so forth. Yeah, but then the president, when he announced his Big Four agenda, you will want people who will be able to help push this with you. Yeah. So from beginning of last year, the president had been saying the Big Four agenda, fight against corruption, BBI. Those are the pet subjects of the president. And if you look at the reshuffle today, you can see that he has tried to ensure that the ministries that drive the Big Four agenda has people whom you'll think are strong and more so are loyal to him. Because loyalty is also very important. There's no point of the boss having this vision and the people who he has appointed or selected to help him drive the vision are not in line with that vision. So I see, for instance, in agriculture, which food security is one of the Big Four agenda. I see that he has now Peter Munya, and then even one good thing that he has done there is to consolidate all these different facets of agricultural, fisheries, cooperatives into one big ministry.
Collapsing them into
exactly. One. So that's ping pong between Munya and Kinjuri, that time when there were issues being raised by Wananchi, especially in Central, about some of these produces. And then Kinjuri will say it is Munya, Munya will say it is Kinjuri.
Yeah.
Now that will not happen. These is all under one ministry. And then you saw that manufacturing is also one big key thing that the president talks about in his Big Four agenda. He has brought in Betty Maina, who's a renowned economist, and also she was driving the Kenya Association of Manufacturers for very long. So she now has a cabinet position to help the president drive that. And then you saw the changes which happened in finance. At least it's called Uhuru
Yatani.
Yes, Yatani now has become substantial, so he has all the powers that he needs to do. And then the addition of innovation as a sub ministry within the ICT.
Okay.
Now that will give more impetus to new ways of doing things. Sometimes for you to actually increase production or to increase efficiency, all you need is some tweak in how things are done.
Okay.
And now focus on innovation will also be helpful in that, yes.
Wilfred, if you look at the composition of the changes, the president bringing in, what you'd say more youth into, government. We've seen women. Job was just saying that at least now we can see 1/3 of the gender when it comes to the CSS. What do you make of the composition of the changes that the president has made?
I think I would like to pick from where he stopped and then come to your question. I think there are around 3 things that make it, long overdue for the president to come up with these changes. Maybe one of them on the sidelines might be what he's saying, the normative, that it is you want people to perform. You're looking for performers within your cabinet. But I'm seeing a few things. One of them is what you've mentioned, that if you look at, there are almost 30, are they 29 CAS. And there was hue and cry when they were appointed first, because most of them were old politicians, Chris Obure and all those people. It was like rewarding those who had lost. And now he's coming to put an art somewhere and bring in some youths there, reacting to that. Second is about the idea of coordinated harmony within the government. And this arises from the fact that there appears a public perception that there are parallel operations within the government. There are people who do things that the president says they should not be doing. That when the president mentions and says, let us focus on development and not politics, but we still hear some of members of the cabinet claiming they'll form political parties, including maybe the minister who has been sent home, because there is a struggle of legacy within Central Province. The number 3 is the politics of BBI and cohesion, the outside one. The president is looking at the ideas of, I think somebody said that the president is running a polygamous house, and I think I agree with him.
What do you mean by that?
That on one side, he has brought in people that we believed were opposed to the government for the purposes, very good, for the purposes of unity of action. But when you do that, then you create also friction with those who believe that we have been in the house that is in the name of the deputy president.
So, based on what he's saying, do you think this is political?
No, of course, the president is the head of state and the head of government, and as the head of state, he has to play with the policy of the republic. So, in political, in the sense that BBI itself is a political process, and it's one key legacy that the president has vowed he's going to deliver. And given that this was a legacy of the president, it is also important. He tried actually to whip and marshal his cabinet to support BBI as a government program. But you saw some didn't support it, and like the former CS Kiunjuri initially actually came out as giving conditions about the BBI. So that doesn't sound very well. Unfortunately, even the deputy president is also sitting very pretty, because he's supposed to be deputizing the president and supporting all the programs the president is saying. So this could be also be a political statement. It could be, the president could be saying, now this is 2020, the time has come. If you don't want to follow my programs, then ideally you're supposed to do the horrible thing. If you're a minister serving the president and you don't follow his program, you should resign, really, rather than wait for you to be sacked. But he has probably given a statement through Monkey Injury.
Wilfred, if you look at, the first time, the president in his first term, when they were appointing, cabinet secretaries, they sort of shied away from the politicians. But over time, we've seen, politicians making a comeback into cabinet. What do you think is changing? Why do you think, perhaps the president is feeling like Mutahi Kagwe, former politician, now coming into cabinet? Why is there the need to now think it's not just about the technocrats, we also need to bring in the politicians?
Thank you very much. That's very valid. I was almost forgetting that. I think that's the core. That must be the core of this reshuffle there. Remember two things. One, the first time there were appointments based on the fact that we need technocrats and not politicians. And as he says, governance is actually purely almost 3/4 politics. Politics is not bad, it's public affairs. And the other side there is about the bureaucracy, working within the system, that it day-to-day activities. So you cannot say you are governing the people and putting away the people who have, crowds and followers, and they know how to appeal to them in terms of politics. And now it brings us to the second thing that which I continuously think I'm seeing. It's more about the politics of the day, and that's why he's making those changes there. We come to the second thing that he has seen. It's like the technocrats are not, closely attached to the people to help the president marshal his ideas of what he has said, BBI, marshal his ideas of cohesion. He thinks very hard that people should work together. We should not have that acrimony. And that is why now he's bringing in the seasoned politicians. And if you look at the old cabinet, whether it was during Kibaki's time and whether it is even during this time here, those who look more confident and look like they are influencing the masses in terms of public perception that is positive towards the government are those former politicians, and not these technocrats that have come from the blue chip. And I think you can see the link to BBI, that this call that ministers should now come from parliament. You have heard about that?
Yeah, we've had that push. We need to go
the
back
parliamentary
to
system.
All right.
Yes.
The youth factor, do you think it is going to, appeal to this particular constituency of the youth? The fact that, now we are seeing more youth being embraced into government.
Yes, it's a good start, and interesting. Most of those youth, some of them are actually very well spoken. These people you'll find in the blogs, and people that, for instance, have participated in some of these reality TV shows. So these are people who...
Even analysts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So there are people who you will think are pretty close to the pulse of the nation. So that will actually help. And the president really needed such youth, yeah, so that the youth can really feel like this government also belongs to them. You know, the youth are actually the majority in the population. And if people run a government and they're not in, they can bring you problems. And then the majority of the problems that the nation is facing actually affect mostly the youth and the very old. Yeah, so those two need to be taken care of socially and economically and even politically. So I'm happy he made that move. And now the next thing, even from his statement, he was saying that they need to learn, get mentored and coached. The next phase now to actually see them now move to the CS level. There's nothing really stopping the youth from being in the CS. Yes, and the energy that they bring and that touch was getting lost a bit. Yeah, we had very serious cabinet secretaries from the blue chip, from the professions, let me call them so. And these are guys who are used to boardrooms and doing stuff. Yeah, but the Kenyan cabinet secretary is not a boardroom person. He's a person who...
Our dynamics are different.
Exactly. You have to be talking to the people and you have to be in touch with them, just like Wilfred is saying, so that people should know that government is here. Just like Fred Matiang'i does. And I think Mutahi Kagwe is also, you'll see the same. People out there on the trenches saying this is the government.
This is the government.
Yes.
All right. Immediately after, the changes were announced, we've seen the former cabinet secretary for agriculture, Mwangi Kiunjuri, came out, made a statement and said, you know what, I'm not surprised. Are you surprised that he was not surprised?
I'm not surprised that he was. That was expected because he went even further to mention that he has suffered a lot of public humiliation. Severally, the president has
so why didn't he resign?
Told him in public. I think I would mention one thing. This is a political process, in my view. Remember, Kiunjuri comes from the president's backyard. And historically, whenever you are, that is Kenya, the leader comes from a region, we all expect that everybody, any leader worth his salt, supports that person at the apex. And once the president has bestowed you with that position as a cabinet secretary, whatever the situation, the best thing for a good politician is not to resign, and that is what he did. And why he's saying that he's relieved is because he even mentioned on the sidelines, the president is struggling with two things: the national political legacy and the serious political legacy in his backyard. And when you look at Mutahi Kagwe and Kiunjuri, they are the leading senior-most politicians in that region. So he brings in Kagwe to balance him. And Kiunjuri is saying that he's relieved in the sense that he thinks now he can go out and maybe lead his party that he has been talking about and be outside there within the short time. And he says, I've been persecuted. I was supporting our person. So again, he'll be in the system struggling. Because politically, I think Kiunjuri is senior-most. He has been in politics the longest among those people trying to inherit the central. Kagwe is now, in terms of age and also stature, we can say he's also senior-most.
All right. What do you make of what he's saying, and do you think Kiunjuri should have taken the option to resign if he felt that he was misplaced while in power?
No, for sure, Kiunjuri should have resigned. It's not that we have not inculcated the culture of resigning in our public affairs, but when the president actually went hard on him at the ASK grounds, and then in another function, that was telling him, I shouldn't have waited for the president to sack him. That was telling him that the president has lost confidence in him. And you should have actually taken the honorable thing and resigned. And the Kiunjuri president thing is a bit interesting because they were actually very great friends. He even said so. I'll imagine if, using conjecture, that the president must have felt really betrayed by Kiunjuri because he probably felt this was my person and this is the guy that I'll probably leave this thing to. And he's just not seeing where I want to take the republic. Yeah, and maybe history will judge Kiunjuri harshly. Yeah, because I think the president really liked him and he was probably the one who was going to be anointed had things moved properly, in my view, for him.
All right.
Yeah.
What about in the case of Rotich? It was more of a case of when than if. And, you know, when we saw the president speaking today, he said that, you know, the war on corruption, in his view, has begun to slow down. Do you agree? Are we seeing, you know, people now being a bit slow before they engage in corruption?
Yeah, if there is anything that we should also be even discussing, you know, the president did not talk about reshuffling the cabinet only. There are other good things down there that have been overshadowed, and one of them is what you mentioned. He talked, I think, more even with greater clarity on corruption than, you know, this reshuffling was like sneaked in, but the other issues, you know, talking about the judiciary not doing its work and making a very valid comparison with the people, drug barons, who have been given like 23 years, but we could not do it here. And also the fact that there are several members of that cabinet. We know we expected that it is the game as usual. Rotich will say outside when we forget, he'll come back. But then we see he has now been replaced, and it is in terms of, because of accusations relating to corruption. So the president is doing very well in terms of, he has done his part, we can say that.
Yeah, based on, you know, what we are seeing, are we likely now to start seeing a culture where, you know, the minute you're implicated and charged in court, people will begin to resign? Because right now the courts is actually making them stay out of office.
We strongly pray for that, and we are seeing that even with the governors, and we expect that maybe the president should continue with that. Although there have been innuendos that he's brought in somebody who also had corruption accusations in the name of Betty Minor. But what we are saying is that he has replaced people who are under investigations, and he has not gone out to protect his own governors who are his friends in Nairobi, in Kiambu there. So he is almost walking the talk that when you are corrupt, you carry your own cross. I think that is also one good element of this reshuffle.
Can you perhaps substantiate, you know, that your statement that he's brought in someone who has corruption cases, Betty Minor?
Yeah, I've seen you are colleagues in the media running those things and showing how the new CS was having problems during the NYS issues. That she was accused of having, I think, those issues of Kapura and all those, those accusations. So that's what is running all through. I think I saw that on one of the media houses, but I have no powers over that.
If she was here, she's not here to defend herself.
Yes,
so we will strike that out for now. But just looking at, you know, the war on corruption.
Yes.
What do you make of the statement by the president, and are we beginning to see Kenyans really changing how they perceive corruption and also stopping it before it even happens?
So the president is frustrated about this, and what frustrates him more is the slowness of the judiciary. But on the other hand, he also takes part of the blame. If you listen to what the Chief Justice said a couple of months ago, where the Chief Justice says we don't have enough funds to have enough judges and magistrates to do this. Yeah, but you can feel the president. He wants corruption to be eliminated.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are in a situation where there's so much bureaucracy and so many other things that need to happen. And my hope is that all the three arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, based on that anti-corruption conference that happened a few months ago, they should have actually gone back and taken some recommendations there and speeded up and cleared all this bureaucracy. For sure, we can actually have a case, just like, for instance, the Constitution prescribes the presidential petition to take 14 days. You can actually prescribe that a case administratively. This doesn't even require... The Chief Justice can actually administratively prescribe that a corruption case, irrespective of whatever lawyers say or irrespective of what the magistrates do, should take maybe 3 months once it commences. Now, those are the kind of things that I think the president wants to see from the judiciary. Yeah, and of course, the judiciary also want to see the president, where it involves his side of the government, also taking some other administrative actions. There are some actions which the president doesn't have to wait for the judiciary to do. He can actually sack someone. He can force them out. He can also take his action. And then Parliament, on the other hand, should be able to help us with laws, things like these conflict of interest, where your documents become public. These are things that Parliament should do. So all these three arms should play their role. But for now, from where I sit, the president, the executive seems to be doing better than the judiciary and the legislature in terms of fighting corruption. And the two should actually join the president so that we slay this thing. We lose so much money to corruption. In fact, if from estimates, and this everybody always says this, we lose about a third of our budget on corruption. That's 300 and something billion, which if we can keep, we will be a very rich country.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want us to focus on, the statement by the president that he wants to leave a legacy of uniting the country through the BBI report and saying, let's stop these divisions among his politicians. What do you see happening in the coming days? Will this succeed in, ending what we see electoral violence every other 5 years? The way this initiative is being fronted.
Yeah, I think the idea and the way the president has been talking his own heart of hearts, he wishes well. He believes, I was even telling him, he believes that this BBI is a better option, is a process that will bring Kenyans together. And he believes, and we have also seen that in a way, with the handshake, the temperatures have gone low. But what we are seeing in terms of practice of the lieutenants of the two groups, or whatever, there are three, there is another group, I would say the president, the former prime minister, and the deputy president. The BBI has become now an extremely polarized political process. And I think the president is trying to plug that by one, you see, when there was a vacuum, politicians took over and started moving around like they are the ones who are the experts behind the BBI. But the president has plugged that by bringing in, by extending, gazetting formally the committee, the group that is of experts doing that. I think that's a good thing. And therefore, the politicians and the other people should allow this group to do what they are trying to do, move around and again now sell the idea and involve the Kenyans. But if we go the way that I saw in Kisii, including people now talking about a local, I've heard that, and it's now moving to Kakamega, that we are going to give you a lineup from the MCA to the governor, whom he'll vote in, and it's moving. That will now even adulterate the BBI goodwill that was there. But in his heart of hearts, I think the president only needs now to be a bit firm on it. First I think he should take back to the stable, the cabinet secretaries, what has been there that they are leading in the regions, like what we saw in the Chungwa and Banana. Take them back and bring this committee to go round, and maybe the politicians will therefore exit. If we go that way, I'm very sure the BBI, if it will be able to bring in even the deputy president to find a role for him, or a seat somewhere for him in this program, and disabuse the perception among his followers, whether in Central or Rift Valley, that the BBI is being crafted to create a position for the groups that are against the deputy president, then we will not have political violence. We will not have that.
So is there a way to bring, the different factions towards, looking at this particular initiative, the way the president, is saying his is about uniting the country? Yet already we are seeing, factions when it comes to this particular report. So is there a way you can rein in on this?
Yes, I think that's one of the attempts he has tried to do by, for instance, getting Mwangi Kujuri away, because he was probably one of the most vocal cabinet secretaries who was not very much in line with the president's wish on the BBI. The other thing is that he has spoken very clearly, and he's passionate about this thing. And what all those doubters out there have to realize that this was not an initiative of anybody else. The BBI was actually the president and the former prime ministers. And people need to give them that chance for them to actually get this into fruition. And the rest of the persons who unfortunately also had some other agendas on it, because people are thinking that this is probably a 2022 game. But from what I've seen, it seems like the president and the prime minister were actually very serious, that they had some issues that they wanted resolved. Unfortunately, as time is moving, 2022 is also approaching, and there are also some people who have a very serious agenda on 2022. Now, these are going to get mixed up. The president can still try to talk to them. He has been issuing very stern messages. Even today, he actually basically answered the deputy president, who the other day was saying this thing is divisive. The president, no, this is not divisive. And one of the things that actually the BBI wants to resolve is that every Kenyan can still feel like they are still in government, even after this person has won and the other guy has not won. Okay. And that's really what we have to learn. So it's my prayer, like every other person, that currently there are like 3 camps of this unity bid. The president and Raila's camp and Ruto's camp. And then there's another camp of people who are not so sure where they want to be. Musalia Mudavadi and Wetangula seems like they keep on not knowing where they want to be. So if they can all know that this is something that the president and the prime minister are serious on and join in, and then if some changes are required, we change them. Yes.
But we've already seen, legal hurdles. If we look at what happened yesterday, the activist Okiya Omtata filing, a case in court.
The extension.
Yes. Now, those questions about this body's, process and all that, do you think that is, going to be a problem for us as we go forward when it comes to the discussion about the BBI for the government?
Yeah, I think another, Achilles heel, or the weak part of the process, the BBI is a good idea, but this implementation or the process is the idea of 2-1 referendum, and that's why now you can see people coming in. And the second one is crafting of positions. But the one of referendum, I think, is one that informs even Okiya Omtata. He's saying that, if the BBI was the idea that has, it's a social idea, it has not gone through like the proper legal process or parliamentary process. It's a social idea between the two people. And if it has the expected goodwill, people are saying that most of the things that BBI wants to achieve can actually gain legitimacy through parliament. We don't need this idea of what a section of the BBI supporters are pushing, that we go to the referendum. That will be like a weigh scale that was there a long time ago, that if we are moving towards elections and we have a referendum, whoever wins the referendum is actually a telltale that you'll be the winner you are testing the waters. And that's why you see even the groups opposed to BBI are also saying we are ready for either way. So I think you are right that the process itself, if it continues without very serious, I think we need further deep consultation and see whether these things can be done through parliament to give them legitimacy, other than going to that polarized referendum, which we are seeing already.
So you're advocating for a parliamentary and not the referendum?
I'm thinking that if it is anything to do with referendum, then let's attach that to the 2022, other than doing it before 2022, the elections. It will be another thing, and we'll go through the same process of let the leaders read for us. Let the people read for us and do it.
You can't trust parliamentarians with the wishes of the people. Yeah, because if they were genuine, all these people, especially parliamentarians themselves, that we're talking about parliament, if they were genuine, no one has stopped them from changing the law. But even now, they don't have to wait for Raila and Uhuru to shake hands and start crafting this 9-point agenda. Parliamentarians can actually, of their own violation or through their parties, can actually change law. So I will not trust Parliament with this, not this current Parliament. And then I know the Okiya Mtata thing. You see, we are forgetting that one of the persons who's this is the President of the Republic of Kenya. And you cannot divorce that from Uhuru. And the President can form a task force, a commission, or anything, and then he's going to appropriate government money. So it's just fortunate for the BBI people that one of the initiators is actually the President. And he's going to use government funds and our funds to get this thing going. And I have no problem if at the end of the day, it helps us sort those 9 things that they had told us about.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Our time is up, unfortunately, so we have to put a cap on that. And just a quick clarification, the Betty Maina that you were referring to is a different one from the one who was the PA to Anne Waiguru. All right. It's time for us to put a cap on perspective tonight, but of course, it's a discussion that will continue over time as, you know, we continue seeing the discussions around the BBI, obviously things that Kenyans are talking about, the BBI, the cabinet changes, what we expect to see in government, the war on corruption, and even the issue of NHIF, which unfortunately we did not have time to discuss, the fact that it was stopped. But a lot more will be coming up as we continue. We have been talking to Job Ndege, who is a political analyst, as well as Wilfred Muliro, putting into perspective what really this means for us as a country. But even as we end that, let's look at other stories. And now Education Cabinet Secretary Professor George Magoha is directing an accusing finger at the public for not giving valuable information to authorities in the midst of recurrent terror attacks in the northeastern region. Now, Professor Magoha condemned Monday's incident where 3 teachers lost their lives, saying those committing the